Started with introductions and so on, I wanted to let you all know that this session is being recorded and will be available on our website later for viewing. Again, please, if you would like to, please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat if you'd like. If you have questions during the session today, please enter them in the Q&A section of your Zoom at any time during the program. If you want to direct them to a particular person, you certainly can do that. We invite you to do that if you so choose. And then we'll be addressing all of your questions at the end of the formal presentation. Looks like folks are doing that, which is wonderful. Okay, logistics out of the way. Hi, welcome to Impact 100 Philadelphia's Grant Applicant Information Session. I'm Kim Kern. I'm the Executive Director of Impact 100 Philadelphia. It's really, I said this 2 minutes ago, literally, but I can't say it enough. It's so wonderful to be with so many members of our region's nonprofit community today. Our goals for today, which are reflected in this agenda, are to make sure that you have a clear sense of who we are, what we fund, our process, and important dates for our grant making calendar this year. I'm joined today by members of Impact 100's grant making process, sort of leadership, as well as a current grant recipient. So they are Allie Glickman and Joan Ryder. They are our grants co-chairs for this year. Joan Almaris is our nonprofit liaison committee co-chair, and her email is probably one that you've seen more frequently up to this point. Michaela Warwick is joining us as executive director of Collective Climb. Collective Climb received a grant from Impact 100 last year, and we're thrilled to have her with us today. And thank you for your generosity of time and wisdom today, Michaela, as well as Barb Renninger and Denise Rainier, who co-chair our financial review panel. And that's the process that folks seem to have the most questions about. We like to make sure that they're always present at this meeting as well. And then I said at the outset, if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A section of your Zoom throughout this conversation. At Impact, we always start our conversations with, whether it's internal or external, with a reminder of our mission, which you'll see in the slide on the left side of the slide in front of you now. Impact 100 Philadelphia's mission is to engage people who identify as women in philanthropy and collectively fund high impact grants that address unmet needs in the Philadelphia region and raise the profile of smaller nonprofit organizations. We only give unrestricted funding, and we have granted more than $5 million to more than 85 organizations in the Philadelphia region since our founding in 2008. This slide also outlines the steps in our grant making process, and you'll notice that those bubbles at the top highlight that we're sort of doing two things concurrently. We are currently having our returning members renew their membership in Impact 100, as well as recruiting new members to join us and to contribute to our grants pool for this grant making year. And that will be happening through November 15th. And then we are simultaneously starting today inviting you and nonprofits in our region to submit requests for funding, and that will be from November 5th through 26th of this year, so a few weeks this month. We'll announce our grants pool to our members and to the general public on December 7th, so the total amount of grant funding that we have to give this year. And then the bottom bubbles show you that from January to June, our democratic grant making process gets underway. Our members are going to review your applications, they'll conduct financial reviews and site visits, and ultimately vote to determine the grant amount for our 6 finalists this year. I'm going to now turn things over to Allie Glickman, one of our grants co-chairs this year, who's going to give you more specifics on the steps of our process, and then we'll continue. Allie.
All right, thanks, Kim.
Yep.
Okay, so our process begins today. Officially, as of right now, our application for the 2026 grant year is now open. The application is open till November 26th, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So hopefully you have plenty of time to complete that application, and we can't wait to start receiving them. After that, December through February is when we start reviewing applications. We start with an initial eligibility review. And if you pass the eligibility review, then you move on to our members. Our members form grant review committees where they read and discuss all the applications. They meet, and at that point, a select number of applications are asked to move on to the financial review phase. That happens the first week in February, and applicants will be notified whether or not they move forward at that time. If you move forward, everyone will be receiving an email from us about this. If you move forward and we don't hear from you, we will reach out to you. You'll get a phone call from Joan or I. Like if our members want you to move forward, we want to hear from you, so we will contact you. After we receive financial information from you, our financial review panel prepares financial review panel reports. You can go ahead a slide. That's fine, Kim. Thanks. Then our members get together. They discuss the applications again, and about 10 to 12 applicants are selected to move forward to site visits. Site visits are one of the most beloved steps of our members, and we can't wait to visit you and get to learn more about your organization in person that we can't glean from an application. So those site visits are conducted in April. You'll be notified about mid-March, and we'll give you time to schedule it. At the end of April, our members come together one last time. Our members on our grant review committees come together one last time to review the organizations that made it to site visit and decide who will become our finalists. And our finalists are notified in early May. So application requirements: you must be tax exempt under IRS Section 501c3, or new this year, are fiscally sponsored. You must have a base of operations in and serve residents of the 5-county area, so Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County. Your programs must address at least one of our 5 issue areas: arts and culture, education, environment, family, or health and wellness. You don't have to choose just one. You can choose one, or you can choose all 5. We understand that you work in multiple areas and your work straddles more than one focus area. At application, you must provide 3 years of audited or independently reviewed financial statements from the tax exempt entity. You must have an annual operating budget between $300,000 and $3 million. And new this year, applicants with budgets over $3.5 million will not be reviewed. They will be deemed ineligible. You must have not received a $100,000 grant in the last 6 grant cycles, so since 2019, or a smaller grant in the last 3 grant cycles, so since 2022. For organizations that are a local chapter affiliate of a national organization, you must have a bank account in the local organization's name. And on our application, there's a question where we ask you to present a compelling case for why now. Applicants must make a compelling case for why this is the pivotal moment in your organization's journey for an Impact 100 grant. Fiscally sponsored organization. So this is new for Impact 100 Philadelphia this year. We're excited to welcome fiscally sponsored organizations to apply. If you are a fiscally sponsored organization, fiscal sponsors and applicants must have their base of operations in the 5 counties of southeastern Pennsylvania. At application, you must include your written fiscal sponsor agreement describing services provided, costs, and a variance clause. Grants funds must be assignable. And you must provide an annual budget, income statement, statement of activities, and balance sheet statement of financial position for the applicant. And for the rest of the financial review requirements, Barb Renninger will take over from here.
Thanks, Allie. I will just reiterate a little bit what Allie has said. We do require for all applicants information on both your income and expense, as well as your assets and liabilities. And these are, people sometimes use different names for these statements, but basically that's what we need for the last 3 completed years. And one thing I will note is we know there's a wide variety of fiscal year ends. If your fiscal year end is September 30th, December 31st, whatever it may be, we know you're going back. But even if you're going back to 2022, we still need 3 years regardless. I also want to be very clear, we need audited or reviewed statements. Any statement that is internally prepared by your organization or your program, if you're fiscally sponsored, must be submitted. We cannot accept anything that is internally prepared. We will also be asking you for an operating budget for the current year and for interim statements showing your year-to-date performance. We will also be asking for your Form 990s. And again, we know that those are somewhat delayed in receipt, and that's fine as far back as you need to go, but we do need two of those. And I just want to make a note, Ally mentioned the eligibility screen up front. And what we're going to be doing is making sure that in particular you have these audited or reviewed financial statements and that they are acceptable. So if you are deemed ineligible, we will let you know immediately. So it's incumbent upon you or applicants to be sure that you have all this information before you start the application process. Okay, next. Okay.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Michaela Warwick, and I'm one of the co-founders and the executive director of Collective Climb. And I'm very delighted to be able to talk about my experience going through the application process as a current grantee of Impact 100. So, before I do that, I'll just give a little bit of a background on our organization and what we do. But Collective Climb is a Philadelphia-based nonprofit that is focused on empowering youth and communities through restorative justice, which is the concept of instead of responding to harm with more harm, we instead focus on finding solutions that meet everyone's need so that we can actually see ourselves as a community and, not further some of the systems that have not been working for us. And we do this through a restorative justice diversion program that keeps youth out of the system and instead in their communities, as well as paid fellowships that train young people in community organizing and relationship stewardship. So I will say this was not the first time that we applied for Impact 100. I'm just going to start there because I do feel like that may be a couple of folks in the chat, like they may have a shared experience. I do believe we had submitted twice before, and I hesitated. I hesitated to apply for a third time. And something in me said, I think the biggest differentiator between now and those previous times is I'm actually able to answer the question, why now? It's not forced, it's legitimately, we have something that is shifted. So that would be kind of a call to action I have for everyone who is considering applying. What has shifted in your organization? What are you looking forward to? What do you need to reconsider in order to actually live out your mission and your vision for your organization? And for us, that was we had finally gotten a space. And this was a space where we were going to be able to train the community in restorative practices and build what had long been an aspiration and now could be a reality. So when it comes to the process for us, I will say it took after taking maybe 48 hours to say, is this something I want to apply for? Does this really make sense? It didn't take a significantly long time, I'll be completely honest. I think what I did was I mapped out a day for myself to write the responses, and then I shared it with my team. And I just had that internal layer of review just for people to maybe ask some questions. And I did write the application in a way that was really focused on telling our story. I think it's important to remember that Impact 100 is a body of women who want to know about the work that is happening in their city and the surrounding counties that is actually changing folks' lives. So paint those stories and be vulnerable and let them see as much of the work as possible and what you're able to write. That was kind of the approach that I took. So there were a lot of narratives in there, as well as numbers, just to kind of showcase, the full breadth of what we're doing. And then, it was right around the holidays, and communication was prompt. Basically, when they say you'll hear back in February about financials. You'll hear back after that, to schedule a site visit in April. All of those communications were really, really timely. And I did get a few phone calls if I didn't respond to the email promptly enough. So that is true. I can vouch for that. But I guess what I am trying to say is put your most authentic foot forward, both in the application, if you are able to get a site visit. That was also something that we did. And I think that might have been the place where we put the bulk of our preparation time in, to be completely honest, because we felt it was really important if we wrote so much about this space that we were building, that whoever came on that site visit got to feel like they were a part of it. So yeah, I just think intentionality is really centered here. And it is like, it's just the way to move forward. So if there are any other questions for me, I'll be monitoring the Q&A to respond to things more intentionally. But I think those are my tips, and that was my experience.
Thank you so much, Michaela. Really, really helpful. I'm always so impressed with the different tips that our grantees can provide. And it's nice to have that inside knowledge from someone who's been there and done that. So really appreciate it. I do have lots of questions in the Q&A, so please continue to put them in there. I will be bouncing these around to my colleagues on the call. And very first question we want to start with, clarifying question. When we say that a grantee cannot have received a $100,000 grant from Impact 100, we mean Impact 100. If you have received a $100,000 grant from another source, first of all, congratulations. But that does not exclude you from applying for this grant. We would encourage you to do so. It is specifically Impact 100 Philadelphia's grants that you have not received within 6 cycles for $100,000 or 3 cycles for the smaller grants. So that was a question multiple people had, so wanted to put your minds at ease right away. And moving on, we had a few questions about fiscal sponsorship. So would love to have Ali or Joan give a quick descriptor of what does fiscal sponsorship mean? A general descriptor, and then in the context of our grant making process.
So what we mean by fiscal sponsorship is that you don't have your own 501c3. You're using the 501c3 status of a fiscal sponsor, and the fiscal sponsor must be located in the Philadelphia area as well.
Okay, so then I have a very specific question. If there is a program that serves the local community but is hosted by Penn, is that considered a fiscal sponsorship relationship?
Ally, do you want to answer that, or do you, what I would say is we need to learn more about it, but it
Yeah.
sounds like if it's a program that is applying under the 501c3 of the University of Pennsylvania, then that would be counted. But we need, one thing Ally did mention is we do need a formal fiscal sponsor agreement, which describes the relationship between the sponsor and the program. And we also need for the funds to be assignable, which means it gives us confidence that the grant is specifically directed to that program and will not be distributed anywhere else within the larger organization. Ally, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, perfect. Another question is an organization that is currently under fiscal sponsorship, but is planning during this period of our grant to transition to their independent 501c3 status. Should they apply? And if so, what might look different about their materials in the review process?
Yes, they should apply. Yeah. So currently, if they have a fiscal sponsor, I think they would follow the application and the financial requirements required of fiscally sponsored organizations at this point.
Oh, great. Another grant question, Ali and Joan, could you go into a little bit more detail about our 5 focus issue areas and what we mean by those broad categories?
Okay, sure. Do you want me to take it, Joan?
Sure.
All right. So we just want to see that your work in your nonprofit fills one of these categories. So family, maybe you work with families, family support lines, health and wellness has a range of things. It could be, a sports program, or it could be a dental program for our children. So environment, what do we, health and wellness, family, environment, education. Education's our most broad one, which is why we decided that you could choose more than one focus area, because a lot of people work in health and wellness, but they're educating. I'm blanking on the last one. Arts and culture. Arts and culture is one of our favorite ones, and we would love to see more arts and culture organizations apply.
Okay, great. How many applications did we get last year?
We got 175 applications.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question that came in is, do we prefer to see applications that are for new projects or programs?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we give general
Okay.
operating grants, and it's up to the organization. Now, if there's something that, as Michaela has suggested, something like a new program or a new something, and that is part of the rationale for why now, then highlight that in the why now question.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to take some financial questions to my good friend Barb. These are always the most popular questions, and hopefully the person that asked them is asking them on behalf of a few others of you in attendance. We will start with a question about 990s. Is a 990N sufficient for what we're looking for?
It is not. We need the full 990 with the complete schedules. And the only thing I will also note is typically a 990N is for a very small organization, generally $50,000 budgets or less. And that would be well below our preferred budget range for our grants. So we do need a standard 990 form with all the schedules.
Perfect. Another question for you, Barb. Do the year-to-date statements require an external review?
No, they can be internally prepared. And the same
Okay.
thing, budgets, current year budgets.
Okay, perfect. Another question, if an organization has never been audited, but they have a compilation of financial statements, is that sufficient?
I'm sorry to say, it is not. It doesn't have to be a full audit, but it has to be an externally prepared and reviewed summary. It has to include a statement of changes in financial position. And so a compilation is not sufficient for our review.
Perfect. And then a question about preparers who would be considered external. So if they use an external tax preparer or their internal accountant, could you clarify which of those would be permissible?
It doesn't necessarily depend on who does it. It depends on what is produced. So an internal accountant is not sufficient. An external accountant who is independent from the organization and does, as I said, either an audit or a review, not a compilation, is acceptable.
All right, perfect. Moving on. We have a few questions where years might overlap. So where we're asking for 3 years of financials, if the organization was fiscally sponsored within the last 3 years and now is no longer, what should they be submitting for the 3 years of financial statements?
They should submit their program budget, the sponsors, full audit, as well as whatever they have subsequent to that in that transition to an independent 501c3.
Okay, thank you. Another question is they have 1 year, the most recent year of financial statements have been externally reviewed, but the 2 prior years were internally reviewed. Are they eligible to apply?
I'm so sorry to keep saying no. No, they are not. You would have to wait 2 more years to come back and apply. We need 3 full years of externally prepared statements.
Okay. Hopefully a clarifying question. Do we need 3 years of 990s or just two?
2 years of 990s, the two most recent years, and 3 years of financial statements.
Okay. Question about the local bank account now. Are there any alternative options if the organization's finances and therefore bank account are held by the entity where they're incorporated, which is not Philadelphia?
What we're looking for with the bank account is an understanding and a comfort that the applicant, so if it's a local chapter, has full control over their finances. So if there is a larger organization that controls the finances, that potentially, I know there's accounting ways to manage things like this, but where potentially there could be some blending of funds, we need to show that the local organization has full control over that. And the way we have defined that is a local bank account under the control of the executive director or the finance person in the local chapter. And again, that applies to independent organizations. For fiscal sponsors, that's slightly different because a program would not have its own account. And that's why we need the fiscal sponsorship agreement and the grant assignment document as well to have some assurance that those funds are truly segregated.
Okay. I have one last one for you, Barb, and then we'll give you a break from talking because I have more questions coming in. If an organization is in the process of completing audited reports for the last 3 years, but they would not be complete by our deadlines, are they eligible?
Sadly, they would have to wait a year as well. We do need the final product to be able to do our full review.
Okay. I'll give you a break, Barb. Thank you for answering all of those questions.
Come back anytime.
I'm sure I will. But I wanted to shift gears a little bit and bring Michaela, Ali, and Joan. We have lots of questions about the site visit. So in particular, would love to hear from your perspectives. If there is no physical location for the organization, how does a site visit work? And then if you could also give an overview about how that process plays out, who goes, who should be there, any sort of general overview of the site visit process would be great. So Michaela, I'll ask you to start from the grantee experience.
Absolutely. So I'll admit we started off as a space that organization that didn't have a space as well, and we would utilize different community centers in the beginning. And so I don't know what Impact 100 stands on if you don't have a site of your own at this time. So I'll save that for someone else to answer. But in preparing for that, I do feel like the people who were there and how they could contribute to the conversation ended up being of utmost importance. So I brought myself, other members of the team, a volunteer researcher that we're working with, as well as board members to just kind of construct a really robust dialogue. So we didn't go about it as like, here's a tour of our location. Instead, we went about it as like, here's a conversation that we can have and a way we can get to know each other. So I created like an opening agenda, as well as like a shared reflection prompt that we could do before it turned into Q&A. So I think, if we separate the idea of a site visit as a tour, and more of a chance to get to know each other, that might be a helpful framework.
Yeah, I agree, Michaela. And we have had organizations who have had site visits in the past that don't have a physical location. Specifically, one of our grant recipients last year, Students Run Philly Style. They run running programs throughout the Philadelphia area. So it's all these different satellites, all after school and at different times, and they're taking off running. So they applied more than once. They had more than one site visit. One year, I remember it was in a satellite location, just like in a conference room, we all met. And another time they hosted it at a running store in Center City, Philadelphia, that they had a partnership with, so the kids could get running shoes. So you don't have to have a physical site, as that grant recipient didn't. And just like Michaela said, it's not a tour. It's really, we want to get to know you. You don't always have to have an agenda together. The site visit leader will reach out to you with any questions members might have after reviewing your application. They also will have some like suggested prompts, like what has changed since you applied back in November, since the site visits occur in April. So we will give you a framework. You don't have to bring in 15 employees, just a few people, it's fine. And we also go with your limitations. Like we ask you, how many people can you comfortably host as well?
Perfect. Thank you. Allie, since you started talking, I have a few more questions about grants in particular. Can you talk about our reporting requirements for grantees? If someone receives a grant, what are our reporting requirements?
From the grantee?
Yeah.
Or your reporting requirements? Well, you're
Yeah,
talking
we
about
don't have any.
yeah, okay.
Sorry, I thought I was giving you a softball there. No,
Okay,
we don't
sorry.
have any reporting requirements
No,
once
yeah.
you receive a grant from us. And then another question, how much can an applicant request funding for in their application?
So when you're applying to our grants, we give out one $100,000 grant and then several smaller grants. The final amounts will be determined in December once our membership closes. So you're applying for the $100,000 grant.
All right, thank you. A couple questions about our preferences for our budget range. So Kim, if I could ask you to go back to that slide.
Mhm.
Our preference is between 300,000 and 3 million. A question on if an applicant has a budget below $300,000. Could you talk about how they're reviewed? They are technically eligible, but below our preference.
Sure. So historically, we've only had maybe 1 to 3 a year that have fallen below the 300,000 and not significantly below. So we include them in the review, and they're treated just like any other application.
Okay, great. Another question about that budget range. Is this for their current operating budget for this year, the fiscal year that they are in, or do we look at past years as well?
I'll answer that. We typically look at the most recent audit to determine their budget range. And I just will say one thing, we look at your expense budget because of the, in some cases, vast variability in, your revenue stream, the way it's accounted for because of accounting rules. So when we look for that 300 to 3.5 million, or 3 million, that's what we're looking at.
Thanks so much. Another budget question. They're kind of related, so I'm going to lump them together. Is the budget for the fiscally sponsored project or the fiscal sponsor? Likewise, is it for the local organization or the national organization?
The project and the local.
Perfect. Thank you. Final question for grants, and then we'll go back to some more financial questions. Could you describe our rubric and review process? Is there anything that is publicly available about how we review and rank applications?
There's nothing publicly available. We do that internally. I wouldn't say we use a rubric per se. We train our grant review committee members on how to thoughtfully read an application, and we give them things to talk about and think about, such as the why now, program served, mission, and how to compare them and talk about them thoughtfully. So it's a lot of conversation that happens within our committees as opposed to like a ranking and a rubric.
Thanks, Ally. Okay, Barb, back to you.
I'm ready.
Question about in-kind revenue. How do we consider that, especially for organizations that with in-kind revenue, they may go over our 3.5 million limit, but if the in-kind revenue is removed, they would be under that threshold?
I saw that question and it gave me, I just will admit it, it gave me pause. And I don't at this moment have a good answer. I'm going to talk to my, because we've never had a very firm cap on our budgets that we're looking at. And so I'm getting, my co-chair is Denise Renier, and she and I have been doing this for a very, very long time. And I'm going to just have to table that and say, send us an email to at the end of this presentation, there will be an email for follow-up questions. If whoever asked that and anybody else, please send us an email and we will get back to you. I apologize for not having the answer, but I did see it was prepared.
Perfect.
Or not
Another
prepared, as the case may be.
Another question, but more than likely just reiterating previous statements. If an organization is still working on their most recent year's audit, can they provide the last 3 completed years?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. And then moving more into kind of jumping around questions, is there an administrative rate that we will cap for fiscally sponsored projects?
We don't have an official
No.
cap, no.
Okay. Could you elaborate on a good why now answer? What makes that a strong response?
I guess I could take that. I mean, we're looking for something that you're responding to. It could be an external issue that you have to respond to. It could be that you're implementing a new strategic plan and you've got it all worked out and you're just ready to implement it. It could be that you're working on a new location and outfitting it. Or it could be an external threat that you're addressing, like many of you will be addressing, like lack of funds that you've been able to rely on in the past. But there are a number of things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Another question, is this a multi-year grant?
So the smaller grants are not. They are 1 year, and the $100,000 grant is a multi-year grant. It
2
is
years.
2
All right,
years.
perfect. Okay. If an organization has a similar mission to a grantee that we provided funds to in the last couple of years, would that be a detriment?
No,
No.
I don't think it would be. I think I saw that question and I was in my mind going through our grantees the past couple years, and I think that happens frequently, and I don't think that's a detriment, and you definitely should apply.
All right.
Can I also
Michaela,
quickly
please.
add? Yeah, I also think there are opportunities amongst grantees to get to know each other and to meet each other, as well as, folks from former grant cycles being able to participate in the process of determining, who comes next. So I think it's a beautiful opportunity to network and collaborate and decide like how shared missions and visions can be strengthened.
Thank you. Thanks, Michaela. That's great insight. Um, Clarifying questions on the 100,000 being a multi-year grant. How is that paid? When is it paid? Is it $100,000? It's $100,000 paid in 2 installments of $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking to my colleagues on the specific payments. I believe they were both in June.
I can do this. I got this one.
Great.
Our our default setting is a payment in June of the grant making year. So for that finalist for this year, it would be June of 2026 would be the first payment. And then the second payment would come the following fiscal year. So it's spread over 2 fiscal years. However, we know that June 1 or early June of 2026 might be very close to a receiving organization's fiscal year end. And you might not want to have an infusion of unrestricted funding at that point. And so if it makes more sense for us to hold those funds until the start of your new fiscal year, we will do that. But the intention is that it spans 2 fiscal years.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Another question is, what type of feedback do we provide to applicants who do not move on at the various stages?
Sure, I can take that one. So we will absolutely provide feedback if you ask for it. So we don't automatically provide feedback to every organization as they don't move forward. But if you reach out to the grants email, which is where your yes or no letter will come from, we will schedule a time and give you feedback, whether it's an email or we've done calls in the past too.
Okay. Thanks, Allie. And are there any common mistakes or misalignment that we see with our applications that folks should be aware of?
I can't think of any.
Yeah, I can't think of
Right.
any as well.
Perfect. Thanks. Then we have a question about fiscal sponsorship, specifically asking why we are now accepting fiscally sponsored applicants to come into our grant pool. So I know a few of us were involved in that, but I will leave this open to Kim, Allie, Joan, Barb, whoever would like to jump in and share.
Sure. This is a conversation that was started a couple years ago, and Impact 100 Philadelphia just went through a strategic plan. And one of the ideas throughout the strategic plan was to highlight smaller and lesser known organizations. And one way we looked into doing that was fiscal sponsorship. So we went through a year-long process where we got to know what a fiscal sponsor was. And we're really excited to accept application from fiscally sponsored organizations this year. We've had them apply in the past and unfortunately had to turn them away. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'd just say to add on to that, it's a response to, the applicants in our community, as well as our members who have, all shown a real interest in making grants available to, these organizations because they are doing such good work in our communities.
Perfect. Thank you both. One last request, Kim, if you could move back to the requirement slides, just to refresh everyone's memory on the years of when they would have received a grant that would make them ineligible. So thank you. The $100,000 grant, if you received that between today and 2019, you unfortunately would not be eligible for this cycle. But if you received any amount other than $100,000 from Impact 100, that would be 2022. So if you have specific questions, if you've received a grant from us in the past and are not sure if you are counted in 2022 or 2021 or 2023, please reach out to us. We can help you clarify that. And then I think there have been a couple other questions come in. I do want to reiterate, these are general operating funds. So while we do ask, about your programs, your projects, why now in the application, the ultimate grant itself is unrestricted. So I hope that answers a lot of folks' questions. And then we have one, how involved does Impact 100 stay in grantees' projects after a grant is awarded? So I will actually take this one. And I will say we have a few ways, and it's really up to you as the grantee. We do offer a complimentary membership to one staff person for the year of their grant. That is at the discretion of the organization. They would just need to meet our eligibility requirements for membership, which I believe is 21 years of age and someone who identifies as a woman, and that's about it. You are welcome to be as involved in that membership as you'd like. We also invite all of our grantees, whether you participate as a member of Impact 100 or not, to come to many of our events. Our annual kickoff in the fall, our fall education event, our spring education event, thinking of many others, our annual meeting in June, where we announce the next cohort of grantees. And we do spotlight every grantee in our member newsletter, which goes out monthly. So in the year following the grant, every grantee is highlighted there. And we keep a recurring update to our members in that letter of regular updates of our last 2 years of grantees. So that can be things if you are recruiting for board members or volunteers, the committee that I lead will be in touch with you to get that kind of information. If you have events coming up, it's really any ways that we can support you beyond the grant. We're open to hearing them. And Michaela, I don't want to put you on the spot since you have only been a grantee for a few months. But if there's anything from your perspective about how Impact stays involved after the grant, give you a chance to share a few things if you'd like.
Yeah, no worries. I think my experience has been similar to what you've indicated. And also to that point of how involved you want them to be, really is true. For example, we've had events and we've invited our liaison and invited members of Impact 100 to be a part of those spaces. And it's wonderful when that is like, eagerly reciprocated and they do show up. And we also show up for these, these events that are created by the body. So yeah.
Okay. I know we still have 10 minutes left. We are getting more questions about fiscal sponsors. So if an organization is fiscally sponsored, can they, as well as the fiscal sponsor, both apply separately?
I don't know. Allie, do you have?
Well, the fiscally sponsored organization can, and if there are fiscally sponsored programs, more than one with the same fiscal sponsor, that's okay as well. I think the fiscally sponsored organization would have to meet our eligibility requirements, which is $300,000 to $3 million, and most of the fiscal sponsors are pretty large, so I don't know if they would meet that or meet our program requirements. So.
Yeah, that's my instinct as well, that the fiscal sponsors I would expect, be quite a bit larger than 3 million if they have other organizations that they're supporting.
Perfect. And are we available for questions if anything comes up after this call? Yes, that is absolutely a yes. You'll see here on this page, thank you, Kim, our website, impact100philly.org, which I'm sure many of you have been to since you made your way to this webinar this afternoon. And this email address, we will answer any questions you have about the application that come through. Anything specific to your situation that we haven't already addressed here, please reach out to us and let us know. And we will do our very best to get you an answer quickly and promptly. And I think that is it. This has been recorded. It will be placed on our website within the next week or so, and you'll be able to view that there. And I think that might be it. So I thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I hope that you found this helpful. Again, if you have specific questions, please send them to this email address. Thank you to our panelists for taking time out of your day to join us and to answer all of these questions. And I look forward as a member to reading all of the applications that are going to come through in the next few weeks. So thank you all and enjoy your day.